It started with a comedy movie and ended with a nation-level cyber attack. Sony Pictures thought they were just releasing another Hollywood film. But in November 2014, their entire digital world came crashing down. Emails leaked. Salaries exposed. Unreleased films stolen. Threats made. And in the shadows, an invisible enemy watched it all burn. This is the true story of the Sony Pictures hack, a cybercrime so bold, so personal, it triggered FBI involvement, global panic, and the chilling realization that the next war might be fought on keyboards. In 2014, Sony was gearing up to release The Interview, a political satire starring Seth Rogen and James Franco. The plot: two journalists are recruited by the CIA to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. It was bold, ridiculous, and for North Korea, deeply offensive. While many in Hollywood laughed, someone else was plotting revenge. On the morning of November 24, 2014, Sony employees arrived to a digital nightmare. Their computer screens showed a red skeleton with a chilling message. "You've been hacked by the Guardians of Peace. We've obtained all your internal data. Pay up or we leak everything." And leak they did. Over 100 terabytes of data, emails, personal information, unreleased movies, employee salaries, medical records, private conversations, flooded the internet. It was one of the most destructive corporate cyber attacks in US history. Sony's darkest secrets were now public. Executives' emails mocking actors. Confidential contracts. Even internal complaints about films and stars. The leaks divided Hollywood. Lawsuits were filed. Careers were damaged. And the hackers weren't done. They issued threats, saying if The Interview was released, a 9/11-style attack would hit theaters. Cinemas pulled out. Sony pulled the release. Free speech, for a moment, had been silenced. The FBI launched a full investigation. And after weeks of digging through IP addresses, malware, and backdoor traces, one name came to the surface: North Korea. The attack was traced back to IPs known to be used by North Korean operatives. Malware similarities were found in past attacks attributed to the regime. And while North Korea denied involvement, the evidence was overwhelming. President Obama addressed the nation, calling it cyber vandalism and vowing retaliation. What followed was a quiet cyber standoff. The US imposed new sanctions. A mysterious internet outage struck North Korea weeks later, believed by many to be a counterstrike by American cyber forces. But the real fear wasn't just retaliation. It was the realization that a sovereign nation had just hacked a private company on US soil, all because of a movie. And they got away with it. The 2014 Sony hack wasn't just about leaked emails or a cancelled movie. It was a warning: cybercrime is no longer about money, it's about power, control, and ideology. If North Korea could do this over a comedy, imagine what they'd do over something bigger. While the public focused on the leaked emails and pulled movie trailers, a far more dangerous reality was unfolding, one the average viewer never saw. The malware used in the attack wasn't ordinary. It was custom-built, military-grade, and designed not just to steal, but to destroy. Once inside Sony's network, it wiped servers clean, bricked hard drives, and left behind no way to recover the data. It wasn't just a message. It was digital warfare, and it came with fingerprints only the most elite hackers in the world could leave behind. But here's the twist. Sony wasn't the first target. They were just the first that made global headlines. Cybersecurity experts began to notice eerily similar attacks that had occurred in South Korea months earlier. Banks, news stations, government offices, all crippled by nearly identical malware. The same backdoors. The same digital signatures. It became clear, Sony was the most public piece of a much larger cyber puzzle. And somewhere behind the screen, a group calling itself Lazarus was pulling the strings, an elite cybercrime unit tied directly to North Korea's intelligence agency, the Reconnaissance General Bureau. But why Sony? Why this film? The Interview, on the surface, was a ridiculous comedy. But to the regime, it was more than an insult, it was propaganda warfare. North Korea saw it as an attack on their image, their leader, their power. And that's when investigators began to suspect. Maybe the hack wasn't just about revenge. It was a test. A probe to see how far they could push. What they could steal. How the US would respond. And more terrifying, how little prepared corporations were for digital sabotage. After the Sony hack, everything changed. Within months, similar ransomware attacks exploded, from WannaCry to major breaches at HBO, Equifax, and even US government agencies. The blueprint had been written. The gloves were off. The age of hacktivism was over. The era of cyber warfare had begun. And while North Korea was the first to strike at that scale, they wouldn't be the last. The Sony hack showed the world something we weren't ready to admit. The future of conflict isn't on battlefields, it's on servers. No sirens. No missiles. Just silence, until it's too late. So the next time your favorite movie gets delayed, your data is leaked, or your screen goes dark, ask yourself, who's watching from the other side of the wire? The public saw the emails. The celebrity gossip. The cancelled movie premiere. But buried inside the 100 terabytes of stolen data was something else. Something darker. Classified documents. Private security protocols. Internal memos about future projects, not just films, but tech partnerships, intelligence briefings, and government ties. Some files were labeled for US eyes only. Why was a film studio storing sensitive geopolitical data? That's when a theory began circulating inside intelligence circles, one too wild to report publicly. Sony wasn't just a victim. They might have been a target for something bigger. An access point. A soft underbelly. Several cybersecurity analysts suggested that North Korea wasn't just retaliating over the interview, they were probing Sony's digital connections to other industries, possibly even defense contractors. A side door into America's private sector. And if that's true, it means this wasn't just the first state-sponsored attack on Hollywood. It may have been a dry run for something much bigger. In early 2015, months after the breach, one of the lead cybersecurity experts on the case vanished from the media. No interviews. No tweets. No public appearances. Rumors swirled that he'd been silenced, either paid off or warned off by a government agency. Another analyst came forward anonymously, claiming, "There's more to this breach than anyone's willing to admit." The moment we started investigating beyond the movie data, phones were tapped. Accounts were frozen. One of us left the country. That analyst also disappeared. Today, the Sony hack is considered a closed chapter by many. Sony moved on. The FBI moved on. The public moved on. But behind the scenes, experts agree on one thing. The full story was never told. The Lazarus Group remains active, linked to cryptocurrency heists, ransomware attacks, and even attempts to hack COVID-19 vaccine research. And Jang Song-thaek, the powerful uncle of Kim Jong-un, once tied to North Korea's international finances, was executed just months before the attack. Coincidence? Or cleanup? What really happened inside Sony's servers? Was it just revenge for a movie, or the first domino in a much larger cyber war? One thing's for sure, the next great conflict may not start with a missile. It may start with a mouse click. Stay with True Crime Stories AI for the untold chapters of the world's most chilling cyber crimes. Because the truth is still uploading. And some files were never meant to be opened.